good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Anywhere you are connecting from in the world, you are welcome to the Q, the Customer Experience Conversations. I remain your host, Dipo Oyewole. You are very welcome. Hope you've been having an amazing day so far. Hope it's been a productive one. Hope it's been a wonderful one. If you're a customer, hope you have been engaged by businesses in a very positively memorable manner. Hopefully not so negative. And if you're a business operator, you're a business owner, you work within an organization, I hope that your organization, your business, you as a business operator, hope you have been treating customers the way they want to be treated. Hope you're giving them positive, memorable events, positive, memorable experiences with you, with your business, with your brand, with your organization. You are welcome. Welcome again. All right. So, sorry enough. Last week we started talking about time to be proactive, and maybe a quick recap. Okay, I try not to do too much of a recap because we do have so much to cover today. All right, so it did stem from, I'm saying this for the benefit of those of us that are just connecting, maybe to the queue for the first time, or it went part of last week's conversation. So last week we started talking about time to be proactive, and it did stem from talking about various pillars that we need to identify and understand when we're talking about the entire customer experience conversation. So it's we started off with 4 pillars weeks ago in the series. Started off with personalization, convenience, competence, and then now we're talking about being proactive. Okay, so yes, it is important that we understand the background and how we are where we are today and why we are here right now. Pardon me, and why we are here right now. So yes, today we're talking about being proactive, time to be proactive, part 2. Part 2. Last week we talked about being proactive, and we had the part 1, we had the first session about being proactive, and we were able to identify and agree that being proactive in terms of customer experience conversation is one of the best things you can ever do as a business owner, as a business operator. It's one of the best approaches you can do because it helps you get ahead of various challenges before your customers experience them. Challenges, issues, no matter whatever it is, it helps you get ahead of them before your customers even engage them to start with. So yes, that is one very cheap way, and I'll say cheap, that is one cheap way for you to be able to engage customers and engage them very, very well. Give me a second. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, so it is one of the cheapest ways that you can engage customers when we're talking about customer experience, being proactive, getting ahead of issues, initiating the conversation first. Because where you find that it is the customer that initiates the conversation first, where they bring a complaint to you or an issue to be resolved, you've already fallen off the wagon. Where we're talking about being proactive in terms of customer experience. So it is important that we're able to identify and get ahead of issues when we're engaging customers. If you foresee any challenge coming up when your customer has engaged you, the onus is on you to see how you can be able to identify what it is and get ahead of it. It tells them that you care about them. It tells them that you are interested in them having the best positive experience while they engage your brand. So yes, today we're talking about time to be proactive, part 2. So we'll dive right in. We're very pressed for time. All right. So let's look at it. Let's start this way. You are welcome to the queue. If you're just connecting with us, you are welcome to the queue. Yeah, so we're still talking about being proactive. Time to be proactive. Part 2, last week, we talked about part 1. Yeah, so how to deliver proactive customer experience engagement. Okay. Number one, very quickly, get to know your customers. Get to know your customers. It is important that you know your customers, because if you do not know your customers, how would you know how to engage them thoroughly? How would you know how to engage them very well? How would you know how to engage them proactively? It is important. It is important that you know your customers. It is important. So yes, you need to know your customers, and you need to know them very, very well. So when you're engaging them, you can tell that this is what they want. This is how they like it. This is how they want it delivered. So it is important that you know your customers. In any business, even not for the sake of being talking about the customer experience, it is just imperative that you know your customers. If you do not know your customers, there is no way under the surface of the sun that you can provide them with the most meaningful, the most tangible customer experience that they will ever have when they engage with you. There's just no way. There's no magic to it. There's no other way to go around it. So you need to know your customers. You need to know your customers. So it also gives you the ability to be able to grow your base, because when you know your customers, you're able to give them what they want. Like we talked about last week, you have them as your brand ambassadors. They are your unpaid marketers. That is the potential that your customers carry when they engage your business. So it is important that we even look at it from a profitability standpoint and from a business standpoint, that you have unpaid marketers in your customers. Because once they have satisfactory experiences with your business, with your brand, they go out there to talk to other people, to come engage your business, to come engage your brand. So it is very, very important that we know that we know our customers, and that we are proactive when we're engaging them. It is very, very important. Paying attention and listening to queries that they may have, either it's on social media, either it's offline, it's something they discuss with you or somebody in your team, is a very key way to know your customers. Ask questions. A customer engages you, either it's offline or it's online. There's no reason why you can't have a 60-second conversation with them. Ask them, oh, I satisfied that service. Is there anything you would like to have? Is there anything that you'd like to have that we do not have at this time, or that we're not providing at this moment? So you need to know your customers. It is important. You have to know your customers before you can attempt to give them the best customer experience that they deserve. Because in the end, yes, they do deserve it, because they are paying for value. And having a good customer experience is part of that value. This isn't just about you exchanging money for products or services. The customer experience is also part of the value that they are paying for. And we must be able to acknowledge that and run our businesses and brands with that consciousness. So it is important. It is important. And if you run the business, or you are a business operator, and you're not paying attention to whatever it is that your customers are saying, especially about you, about your brand, about your industry, or about your sector, you are missing out on a lot of opportunities. Because when customers talk, they are giving you a lot of information that you need to work with. That's really just how it is. When customers talk, they are giving you the information that you need to do better. They are giving you the information you need to run smarter processes. They are giving you the information you need to be smarter with your business, to have smarter processes, to have a better understanding of what they need, what they want, and how best to deliver it to them. Because either you like it or not, when one customer speaks, they are likely speaking for a dozen more. So you don't necessarily have to engage a dozen customers to have an idea of their perspective or what they want with regards to when they engage your business. In terms of customer experience and when customers give you feedback or when customers share the experience or when they talk to you, it's more of a code of the musketeers. One for all for one. When one customer gives you some information, some feedback, it is as good as a dozen customers telling you that this is what they want, this is what they need, this is how they like to be served, this is what they want from your brand, this is what they want from your industry, this is how they want to engage your sector. So at every given time, we must make sure that we know our customers per time. And for different phases in our businesses, we find that sometimes we have an evolution of a customer base, depending on how you are running your business, depending on the different phases that your business exists in. If for any reason you're able to, for example, change your price point, maybe you price your product or your service a little higher, you find that you then have a different crop of customers over a period of time. So for every phase that passes, for every phase that comes, you must make sure that you know your customers per time. It is important that you know those customers per time. And don't just assume that the customers you have now are the customers that you've always had before. It's not possible. You would always have an evolution of a customer base. And you must be able to identify when that happens. Of course, it won't be sudden where you have 20 customers in the month of January and then in the month of June you have 20 fresh customers. No. A couple of them will start cycling out. A couple of them will start cycling out. They start cycling out. They start to cycle out. So you must be able to identify, excuse me. You must be able to identify when you have an evolution of your customer base and see how best to serve them better. Because you must be able to know them. Know your customers. It is important. You must know your customers. You must know your customers. It gives you a better understanding of their struggles, of their dreams, how you can address the important needs that they have and increase their satisfaction levels. So you must know them. You must be able to identify them. Say, okay, these are my customers. And this is how best they want to be served. This is what they want. This is what they like. Okay? So the next point we're looking at is gather feedback. This is the point that we make on the queue every week. Literally every week. In the last 6-7 weeks, we've been talking about feedback. We must get feedback. We must get feedback from customers. It is important. That's the only way we know to do better. You serve customers the way they want to be served, not the way you believe they should be served. Because in the end, they dictate the tune. You must serve them the way they want to be served, and you can only know that from feedback. You must have effective feedback mechanisms within your organization, within your business, within your brand. It is important. Effective feedback mechanisms. That's the only way you know if you're doing the right thing, how you can do things a lot better. If you're doing something good, how you can do it better. And if what you're doing is not so good, how you can change it and see how you can do it in a satisfactory manner for your customers. Feedback. It is important. You must gather feedback. We will keep talking about feedback on the queue every time. Because it is the information that we need so that we can do better, so that we can provide better services, better customer experiences to our customers, to our clients. We just must do better. And that comes from having feedback. We must not take feedback for granted for any reason. We mustn't take it for granted. Okay? So yes, let's look at quick ways to gather feedback. And I'm sure we've touched on this a couple of weeks ago. But let's look at it again and from a different perspective. Ways that we can gather feedback so that we can be proactive. Because let's remember that we're talking about being proactive with regards to customer experience, getting ahead of issues before they happen. Let your customers know that there's likely to be an issue, a challenge, and how they can address it when it happens. So let's look at ways that we can get feedback. We're talking about being proactive, including a feedback form on your website, for example. Okay, when you have your website on, you should have a feedback section there where customers can always go to give you their thoughts. Either it's positive or it's negative. They must be able to give you their thoughts. They must be able to give you their thoughts. Have it on your website. I'll give examples of some brands where you will then identify that it may not necessarily be on their website. But for example, you make a call on WhatsApp. You would find that either every time you make a call or 1 out of 3 times when you make a call on WhatsApp, there is always a pop-up where it says rate the call from 1 star to 5 stars. I say submit. That is part of the feedback that they work with. It's part of the feedback. On YouTube, either it's for YouTube itself or various brands that are advertising on YouTube, you see the surveys, you see the forms, you see boxes that you need to check. On Instagram, it's the same thing. Feedback is important because you need to ask yourself, if you have big brands like the YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, the big brands that we have out there today, if they are very keen on having feedback, why do you think that as a small business that you don't need feedback? Because they are big brands today because they take things like this seriously. They didn't become big brands and then to start taking feedback seriously. It's part of the integral element of why they are where they are today. Because they take customer experience very seriously. And part of the ways they take it seriously is because they have a strong feedback culture. They have a strong feedback culture. Even though sometimes it can be disruptive. Sometimes you're watching a video on YouTube and then some survey pops up in form of an advert. It's because they want to know. They want the feedback. Send surveys out. You can use SurveyMonkey, Google Forms. Send surveys out. You can send it via emails, on WhatsApp, across various platforms. Send surveys out. That's a way to get feedback from your customers because you must have feedback. You must know what they think. You must know how they experienced you, how they experienced your brand, how they experienced your business. You must be able to conduct surveys because you need that information. Interview a handful of customers. Interview them. It could be when you see them physically, or maybe just ask questions when you engage them online. Ask them, how can you improve your products? How can you improve your service? Get feedback. Also as important as that is check your messages, check your mentions. Your brand is mentioned on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. Be in touch with those platforms. If your business is featured on those platforms, don't just leave them hanging. You must be able to get feedback from those platforms. Sometimes people mention different brands on social media. And we have found that some of them have even refused to acknowledge those mentions, those messages, those complaints, because we haven't seen a lot of improvement in months. So what's the point of being featured on those platforms? Why are you featured on them if you won't take the feedback you're getting from there seriously? Or you believe that you're just on those platforms to just do advertisements, sell what you have to sell, and then be done with it? No. They are sound platforms for feedback. Very effective. Because you have no idea how much information you can get from those platforms. You have a particular customer that engaged your brand, goes on Twitter to give, for example, a positive feedback. And then you have someone else say, oh, that's true. I engaged the same brand, I had a positive experience. And then somebody says, oh, somebody says the same thing. There is no way in that thread of conversation that you won't see a lot of people asking, oh, where is the address? What is the social media handle? How can we engage them? How can we patronize them? So it is important that you're able to get feedback. And feedback does not have to be negative. So even when you get positive compliments, it is a form of feedback. It tells you what you're doing well and what you can do better. That's what it is. So positive compliments are also a means of feedback. So we shouldn't always see feedback or look at feedback from the lens of it being negative. No. Feedback can also be positive. So we must embrace feedback. We must embrace it. And if you're also very observant, when you gather feedback, you will notice that there are certain trends in the feedback that you receive. For example, if you have negative feedbacks, for example, you have 20 negative feedbacks every week. Now, if that happens, your business is in serious trouble. But let's use that as an example, okay? For example, you have 20 negative feedback every week. That's 80 in a month. Every week, if you look at it, particular issues that are raised, maybe it's about your delivery, maybe it's about your service, maybe it's about your product, maybe it's about warranty. If you look at everything and you analyze the data, because it is a form of data, feedback is a form of data. When you're able to analyze it, you notice certain trends where maybe in every week out of every 20, half of it is about your deliveries, the logistics, your customers getting their items when they said, after you agreed that they would get it. Or maybe they're not getting their items on time, or they get their items and they're damaged, or they're torn, or the packaging has been compromised. If that is what you get 10 times out of 20 every week, that in itself is a trend. That tells you what to look out for. That tells you the first thing to look out for. And then you look at the next issue. So that is how to address issues, using feedback. That's how to serve customers better, using feedback. So it is important that we embrace feedback and we have effective feedback mechanisms in our organizations, in our businesses, and in our brands. So that when we get that feedback, we get the information, we get the data, we can study it, analyze it, work with it effectively, and deploy the resources that we need to deploy to ensure that those issues do not continue, they do not persist. So when you go into next month, if for any reason you still have 20 negative feedbacks, 10 of it should still not be about your delivery system. It shouldn't be. Because from the previous month, you've been able to take that data and see how you could streamline that particular process to be more effective. That's the purpose of feedback. That's the purpose of feedback. It will also give you a lot of insight into what you need to put to be proactive with your customer experience engagement. That's what feedback does. Basically, that's what it does, because now we're talking about being proactive. That's what it does. Helps you to be proactive. Helps you to be proactive. Moving on to the next point, because we're way behind time. Empower employees. And I'm sure this would ring very familiar with the folks that joined us when we talked about competence a couple of weeks ago. Competence. Where we talked about either you have, you have employees, you have teammates, you have business operators, you have people that work within an organization, within a business, who must know everything about your business, about your product, about your service. Product knowledge must be top-notch, and they must also be provided with the resources that they need to engage customers profitably, productively, and as best as they can. To empower employees, empower teammates, give them the adequate resources that they need. That's the way to be proactive. Because once they know or they understand that this is what the product does, along the line, maybe after 6 weeks, after 12 weeks, after 20 weeks, 24 weeks, they're likely to have this particular challenge. They're able to contact the customer If it's a product that is supposed to have a particular issue around 20 weeks, around 16, 17 weeks, call your customer ahead. Let them know what to expect. Because you think it's 20 weeks, depending on the usage, it could come off or the issue could arise at the 18th week. But because you have been proactive, you have been able to engage your customers, let them know on time that these are the likely issues, these are the likely challenges that they are to face. They are able to prepare themselves and act accordingly. So when that happens, they aren't caught unawares, they aren't frustrated when it happens. So it is important that you empower whoever it is that is engaging customers. Employees, teammates, your operators. You must be able to empower them, not just with resources, you must be able to empower them with information that they need to be proactive when they've engaged customers or when they're engaging customers. It is very important. It is very, because that's the only way they can instinctively guide customers to the right solutions before customers even know that there is a challenge coming up. That's the only way they can do it, if they are empowered with the necessary tools, necessary resources, necessary information. Because that's the most important, information. They must know. They must know. It is important that they know. They must know. They must be armed with the relevant information for them to instinctively guide customers to say that this is how to do this, this is how to get this done. If you do it the other way, you get this result. If you do it this way, this is the result you get. So it is very important. If you have the opportunity to set up maybe internal knowledge base or communication space where your teammates or people within your business, within your organization can always ask questions, and always come together to say, okay, you know what? This is the usual challenges that we get from customers. Even I don't know how to solve it. Or we have engaged the product, we have seen how it works, we think that we don't know enough. Can you help us? Can you train us? That's how to go about it. That's how to go about it. So the next point we'll be looking at is you create content and resources that tie into the feedback that you receive. Because when you're aware of the most common problems and complaints that you have from customers, you can create resources that proactively tackle them. For example, you have an FAQ base, frequently asked questions database, where your customers can always go on there to check it out. Oh, what to do if I'm using my device and then it doesn't come on, or I'm using it, or I'm trying to use it, it doesn't come on, or I'm using it and the power goes off. Why does the power go off after 40 minutes of using this device? Why does it go off after 60 minutes of using this device? If you have that kind of feedback repetitively, there's no reason why you can't have a database of frequently asked questions where that particular issue or those kind of issues are addressed, and they are addressed effectively. So your customers don't even necessarily need to engage you or engage an operator with your brand. They can always go on there to get the solutions that they need. They can always go there because you provided relevant resources for them to be able to explore, to get the answers that they need. And if they're able to get those answers there, there is really no need for them to engage a human being or a human interface for them to get the solution that they require. There's no need for it. Now, according to a research that was done, 91% of customers say they'd be willing to use online self-care knowledge resources. Meaning that 91% of people are saying that they'd rather not engage with another human being when they have challenges with a product or a service. They'd rather go with online resources. Go on there, maybe use Google or YouTube, or go on your website or your social media page to get the answer that they need, to get the solutions that they need. But when they run into challenges with your product or with engaging your services. 91% of people say that. And 67% of customers prefer self-care over speaking to a company's representative. They'd rather do it themselves than engage another human being. Because frankly speaking, sometimes it isn't always convenient engaging another person at the end of a communication device. Either it's in the DMs, via the website, via the call center. It isn't always convenient. It isn't always convenient. Okay? But if you have those resources, you have those tools in place where they can engage it and do it themselves, self-care, self-help, and they can provide those solutions themselves without having to engage another human being. They don't have to come around for technical support or to have a conversation with them over the phone or through messages for them to be guided. If you have those resources in place, it will be very effective. Now, let me give you a few tips as to how to create helpful resources. Okay? A few tips on how to create helpful resources that your customers can engage with, like they can engage with, resources that they can use without having to engage another human or without having to go through a human interface to have their solutions provided to them when they have challenges. Because this is part of what it means to be proactive in a business. It's what it means to be proactive when you're engaging customers. Identify common questions your audience have. Because they always have those questions. Like what I said earlier, from the feedback that you get, identify the common questions, identify the common complaints. Identify them and build resources around solving them. They have questions, provide solutions to them. Determine the most efficient solution to the problem. The most efficient, straight to the point. Take out the battery, put it back in, power the device. Very simple. Check the cable in the power outlet if it's on. If the cable is positioned correctly. Check the sign on the cable. The side on the arrow is supposed to be pointing up. It's supposed to be facing you. It's supposed to be facing this direction. Very simple. The most efficient solution to the problem. Those are the things that you need to provide when you're providing these self-care and self-help resources for your customers. It must be efficient, or else it defeats the entire purpose anyway. Remember, we talked about convenience a couple of weeks ago. Convenience. It must be convenient. If it is convenient, it is what saves your customer time and energy. And if it's saving them time and energy, it must be efficient to do that. It must be efficient for that to happen. It must be efficient. So choosing the most knowledgeable team member to create a resource that outlines the solutions. There's always that team member that knows about the particular challenge the most, that can address it the best out of an entire team. There is always that team member. Identify that person and let them help you draw out the guidelines as to how you can solve that challenge. Engage them. Engage them. There's no reason why you shouldn't engage them. Engage them. Let them draw out the guidelines. Provide the best solutions that you can provide. Okay? So the next thing we're looking at is deciding the best format for the information to be presented to your customer. Is it best to be done pictorially? Is it best to be done with a video? Could it be audio messages? What are the best ways? What are the best formats? What are the most efficient ways that you can deliver that information to your customer? Could it be 10-second clips, 30-second clips? Are those the best ways that you can deliver that information that you want to deliver to your customer? Is that the best way you can? Identify it. And you also get to identify it from getting feedback. Ask your customer, this particular solution that we're trying to provide to you. Moving forward, this is what we're trying to do. Would you prefer it in this manner, or in that manner? Ask questions. Ask questions. That's the reason why we need to have conversations with our customers. We must get information at all times. We must get information. And creating the resource and testing it out with a handful of customers. So when we're talking about you having online resources where your customers can always tap into to get the solutions that they need, that they require, test it out. Have a beta test. Have a handful of customers. Test it on them. Get their feedback. Because that's actually the point of testing it on them. Is so you can get the feedback. Then you know, okay, this is where we need to tweak it. This is what we need to do better. We need to take this out. We need to include this. Let them be part of the process, because in the end, it is for the customers. Like we've said before, in terms of customer engagement, it is about what the customer wants, not what you believe they want. So your customers must lead the conversation. And they can only lead the conversation when you give them the opportunity to do so. Because not every customer will give you their feedback willingly. Not every customer will talk. Not every customer will tell you that this is what they want. Not every customer will. So you must engage them. You must get feedback. And when you have those resources set up, you must test them on your customers. You must have them tested, because you must know if it does solve the challenge that you intend for it to address. If it doesn't, then it is redundant. It's been a waste of time and money. It's been a waste of resources. So you must be able to ensure that it does do what you intend for it to do. And the only way you can know that is when you engage customers with it. Test it on customers. Test it with customers. Get their feedback on it. That way you can know if it's doing the right thing or it isn't. Okay? And directing future customers with similar complaints to the resource, or making it readily available for customers to search. That's another way that you can develop the resources that you want to give your customers for them to engage with online when they're providing solutions. Direct them to it in advance, even before they have the challenges, before they have the questions. Direct them to it in advance. Let them know that you have these resources online that they can engage. Let them know. Let them have it. Let them have it. Okay? So winding down, the final point we'll be looking at is follow up low customer satisfaction survey scores immediately. When you'll be able to conduct surveys, when you'll be able to ask questions, when you'll be able to get feedback. The low scores, the places that tell you that you're not doing well, follow up with them immediately. Follow up with them with a quickness. It is important. Don't just leave them laying fallow like that. You must follow up with them immediately. Immediately. Because that's the only way you can get ahead of the situation before it gets out of hand. Because that same customer will share that same negative feedback with other customers. So you must get ahead of it. So it goes back to feedback. Because if you didn't have a feedback mechanism in place, there is no way you'll be able to know that you have low customer satisfaction points. There is no way. So yes, feedback, feedback, feedback. That is the title of the song that we sing on the queue. Feedback. You must get feedback. The most basic and one of the easiest forms of proactive customer engagement is following up low satisfaction scores immediately. You must follow it up immediately. It's being proactive. It's really being proactive. If a customer engages you and they give you, for example, maybe 1 star. For example, if you engage WhatsApp, if you use WhatsApp calls, and maybe you have like maybe 1 star, or maybe you submit 1 star, or a very low score, or some of these other online platforms that you fill their surveys. If you feel like if you submit 1 star to them, Some of them get to ask you questions. They ask you questions because they want to know why it is 1 star that you're giving them. They want to know. That's them being proactive with it. Not everyone, of course. WhatsApp can't start calling every single person that gives them 1 star. But they've been able to provide mechanisms in place for them to be able to get that feedback. So they ask you the question, what's the problem? What can they do better? What's the issue? From there, you can determine if you need to send an apology message, if it was a one-off issue that just happened, or what you can do to remedy that situation. You must be able to address it and address it immediately. You must be able to address it immediately. Either with a phone call, with an email, with a message. Address it immediately. It is very important. And when you have a brand that asks customers how easy it was to complete an order, that is a form of feedback. You can follow up with them as well to know if it is easy to fill up orders, if it isn't easy, what are the challenges they are facing, how do they believe that they can do better. I mean the brands now. So it is important that we are proactive. We are proactive. We are proactive. And we will be continuing this particular conversation and rounding it up next week. We're talking about time to be proactive, part 3. Because we have so much to cover when we're talking about being proactive, looking at ways that we can be proactive when we're talking about it in the context of the customer experience, providing the best and the most effective customer experience. Okay? On the final note, as always, remember, no matter which side of the aisle you are, either you're a customer, you're a business operator, you must stay agile. You must be agile. As a customer, keep your expectations reasonable and get value for your money. That's what you're paying for. Get value for it. As a business operator, as a business, as a brand, strive to meet those expectations. The expectations that your clients have, that your customers have. Strive to meet those expectations. The only way people are able to measure positive customer experiences or good customer experiences is when expectations of the customer is matched by the service that they get from you. When the expectations are met, that is when they have positive customer experiences, not the other way around. So you must give your customers that value because it's part of the value that they're paying for. And once we're able to do this, we believe that together we'll be able to define what it is to have sound customer experiences. Same time next week, we will be continuing the conversation on the Q. Till then, if you want to catch up on our previous episodes, go on our YouTube page, the Q Podcasts, the Q, the CUE Podcasts, on our podcast platforms, the Podbean and Apple Podcasts, the Q Podcasts as well. Remember to like, share, and subscribe on our platforms, and of course, on this particular Instagram channel. Remember to share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend that we are having the customer experience conversations right here on the Q every Thursday, same time next week. I'll see you again. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening. Till then, from me, Biko Oyewole. Bye-bye.